Hello, sorry, welcome to everyone to today's Meet the Funders webinar. We're delighted and very grateful to have Esme and Karen with us from Creative Scotland, who will be sharing information on their grant and application processes. A quick note on some housekeeping. So today's session is in a webinar format. If you're looking to have captions on throughout today's session, at the bottom there's a wee bar. And if you could just click more on the far right and show captions, that'll enable it for you as well. But let us know if there's any issues with that. Just a wee note as well, the session is being recorded. We will share the recording and the slides after today's session. There's a chat function and there's also a Q&A chat on Zoom as well. So if you can put any questions in the question and answer section, and that'll just allow us to keep an eye on them and monitor them. If you also see a question that you think, oh, I was going to answer that or ask that, sorry, or would like the answer to, you can upvote it as well. And that just lets us know that there's more than one people wanting to know the answer to that question as well. So yeah, we'll send the recording and the presentation slides after today's session. We'll also send an evaluation link. Your feedback's really important to us. We use it to help improve and shape future sessions and the support we provide to the sector around our kind of funding sessions and support as well. So we'd really appreciate you filling that out when it comes through. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us for today's session. We'd love to know who you are, whereabouts you're joining us from. So if you can just drop us a wee message in the chat, that would be brilliant. So my name is Kirsty Young and I'm the Funding Scotland Development Officer at the Scottish Council for Voluntary Organisations, also known as SCVO. The Scottish Council for Voluntary Organisations is a national membership organisation for the voluntary sector. Our mission is to support, promote and develop a confident, sustainable voluntary sector in Scotland. So as I mentioned, I'm the Funding Scotland Development Officer, but for those of you who don't know what is Funding Scotland or might not be aware of what Funding Scotland is, Funding Scotland is a service provided by us at SCVO. It's a free funding database for the voluntary sector for groups working in Scotland, and it's hundreds of information and funding opportunities that are currently open and regularly updated as well. We currently have over 1,300 funds listed on our platform. We try to make it as easy to use and as accessible as possible, so you can use keywords and filters to identify the most relevant funds for you. So there is some standard features that everyone can access that I've mentioned through Funding Scotland, and there's some further features you can access as a SCVO member as well. So you're able to kind of save frequent searches, create a list of favourite funds, receive personal email alerts on your saved searches and lists. You can also add notes and keep a track of your applications, along with some extra information on funds as well, including award sizes and application success rates as well. So alongside the Funding Scotland platform, we look to provide support around funding. We host these free monthly Meet the Funders events that take place on the first Tuesday of every month at 10 AM. So the next one will be Tuesday the 7th of April with the Royal Bank of Scotland Social and Community Capital. And on Tuesday the 5th of May, it's with the Architectural Heritage Fund as well. So my colleague Chris will put the link in the chat to those sessions if you would like to sign up. We also have advice and guidance on applying for funding, which you can find through our website. And we also provide a range of training and the learning courses around different elements of funding. So in terms of these training courses, we have recently launched different training courses around different elements of funding. So we have an introduction to fundraising course taking place on the 19th of March. So if you're new to fundraising and want to learn about the different types of fundraising and where to start and put your efforts into, you can come along to that session on the 19th of March. We're also launching a range of training around funding fundamentals. So the first two training courses will be around growing support through giving events, so focused on supporting organisations to grow support through individual giving and events as well. We're also putting on a session around choosing the right funds and thinking like a funder, which will support you to kind of look at how you prioritise grant applications and what funders look for in application forms as well. So we'll put the link to those training courses in the chat if you would like to attend those. So there is, as I mentioned, with Funding Scotland, there's a range of Funding Scotland benefits and features that you can access as an SCVO member. So a membership is free for organisations with an annual income of under £100,000 and on a tiered scale thereafter. And you can find out more information on our website on this at scvo.scot/membership as well. We currently have a community of over 3,540 organisations in Scotland, and there's a range of different membership support that we can provide as well. So do get in touch if you would like any more information on that. And then just a wee quick note as well, we host the Scottish Charity Awards every year, and there's currently 2 weeks left to apply for this year's Scottish Charity Awards. So you can apply now and tell us about your organisation's inspiring achievements and impact over the past year as well. So in order to apply, if you could submit your application by 12 p.m. on Tuesday, the 17th of March, and help us celebrate the brilliant work going on in the voluntary sector with voluntary organisations of all shapes and sizes across Scotland. And there is 9 different awards and categories within that. So that's enough from me. Sorry, I'll now pass you over to Esme and Karen to talk about Creative Scotland. Thank you.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our presentation here. If anyone does have any questions, do stick them in the chat. Esme and I are going to do a bit of a double act here to tell you a bit about Creative Scotland and our funding. So just to introduce Creative Scotland, many of you might know who we are. For those of you who don't, so Creative Scotland, inclusive of Screen Scotland, is the public body that supports the arts, screen and creative industries across all parts of Scotland. We are a non-departmental public body of the Scottish Government, and our remit is set out by an Act of Parliament, the Public Services Reform Scotland Act 2010, if anyone wants to check that out. And we do have general functions set in stone by the Act of Parliament, which include promoting and supporting or encouraging and supporting artistic and other creative endeavours, and supporting, developing and identifying quality and excellence in the arts and culture. So one of those sort of 6 general functions as set out by the Parliament translate into the priorities for our work, including encouraging as many people as possible to access and participate in the arts and culture. So we distribute funding from the Scottish Government and the National Lottery. We are one of 4 National Lottery distributors in Scotland, alongside Sport Scotland, the National Lottery Community Fund and the National Lottery Heritage Fund. In this year, in 25-26, our budget from Scottish Government is £89 million, which includes funds, restricted funds for things like our multi-year funding programme and the Youth Music Initiative. Our National Lottery funding is expected to be similar to previous year, around 30 million. So at the moment, our budget is over 100 million, which includes National Lottery funding. In next year, 26-27 financial year, we are expecting at least 100 million from the Scottish Government, which also includes those ring-fenced areas I mentioned earlier. So the Police Partnerships and Communities team, we lead on areas that, deal with the area of places, communities, that includes things like creative regeneration, community engaged creative practice, and we also lead on Gaelic arts, traditional arts, Scots, and programs like the Police Partnership and Culture Collective program. So moving on to the next slide. So Creative Scotland's strategic framework covers what we want to see and how we will deliver that. So as I mentioned, sort of our strategic priorities are in part based on the points set out in the Act of Parliament that set us up, which include supporting people and organisations working in the arts and creativity, and making access to artistic and creative activities wider across Scotland. We have 4 strategic priorities and 6 funding criteria, and I'll just go through the 4 the 4 priorities and then mention the funding criteria as well. So next slide, please. So the first of our funding criteria, and these are not in any order of priority. We want to support equalities, diversity and inclusion, which is about having a diverse range of people, communities and activity across the whole of Scotland. We want to support sustainable development, and this includes both supporting addressing the impact of climate change, tackling the climate emergency, but also supporting the growth of sustainable creative businesses. Next slide, please. Our priorities are also fair work, which is really critical, especially given the issues around pay and in the creative sector. But this is not just around pay, it also includes opportunities, conditions, contracts, and ensuring that the Scottish Government's fair work principles are applied to the creative sector. We have a 4th priority of international, however, that's not necessarily relevant for everyone, but where it is relevant for people working internationally, it is about making sure that those international collaborations and exchanges are sustainable and continue to promote Scotland's place in the world. For example, addressing work that we do with Europe, given the impact of Brexit on visas and travel around Europe. Next slide, please. We also have 2 additional funding criteria, quality and ambition and engagement. And along with the 4 priorities and the 2 funding priorities, these are how we make decisions and the questions that we ask people when they apply. So quality and ambition is about supporting organisations and individuals to develop and deliver high quality work. This can be either around the process of developing that work, the outcomes of that work, or how people deliver and develop their creative practice. For engagement, this is around people engaging with communities, with audiences, and how people might do that, whether as participants, creators, or consumers. It also recognises that as an individual practitioner, the public benefit or the engagement with an audience might be delayed. For example, if you are developing a book, you're not necessarily going to engage with lots of people in the delivery of writing that book, but lots of people hopefully will read that book. We do expect all applicants to address the funding criteria, except for the international one, as that is optional and is only relevant if you're delivering or engaging in international activity. And we would encourage people to read our funding criteria so that they understand exactly what it is that we're expecting from people there. Next slide, please. So this is the main bit of the discussion. So we have 4 main routes for funding. We have multi-year funding, open funding, targeted funding, and funding delivered by partners. And when I'm talking about this, I'm This includes funding from both Creative Scotland and Screen Scotland, which is part of Creative Scotland. Multi-year funding, I'm not going to spend much time talking about. At the moment, that fund is closed. In January 2025, we announced the 251 organisations that were successful through that route. And we added just this year another 13 organisations who had been supported through a development stream. So from 26-27, there's 262 multi-year funded organisations. Our National Lottery Open Fund programme is our main funding programmes and the one that we'll talk about, and also a few of our targeted funding and funding delivered by others we'll mention as well. If you are interested in funding specific to the screen sector, please check Screen Scotland's website. They have funding that will support both individuals, organisations, and the development of screen activity. Next slide, please. Yeah, that slide. So, open funding. National Lottery Open Fund supports individuals and organisations. I'm going to mostly talk about organisations here because I think that's where most people attending this will be, but we do have separate guidelines for both the individuals side of it and the organisations side. So we will support, basically through the Open Fund, we can support anything from an individual developing a book, as I said earlier, or professional creative development for an individual to programmes of festivals, year-round programmes of creative activity or one-off projects. The funds don't have any deadlines, and it will support for individuals from £500 to £50,000 for up to 24 months, and organisations from £1 to £100,000. Now, there is a different level turnaround time for the decision making of an application, depending on how much you ask for. So if you ask for under £20,000, it's a shorter turnaround time than if you ask for over that. If you ask for over £20,000, the turnaround time is 14 weeks. Next slide, please. As I said, open funding is the thing that most people will apply for. We do have guidelines on that, but I just wanted to mention some targeted funding here, which include our Youth Music Initiative, which is a fund that supports activity in schools, but there are also two other funds that are open for non-school based activity, and that's a deadline-based fund, and you just need to check our website for when some of these deadlines happen. The Touring Fund for Theatre and Dance, which supports activity to tour to places and ensures that both the venues and the creators of the work are properly recompensed for doing that. There's the crowd match funding, which I'll ask Esme to talk about in a minute, and screen funding, as I mentioned earlier, and Esme's shared the link on, which supports lots of different funds, including the Screen Education Fund and the Schools Screen Education Fund, which supports work in schools. So please do check that out. Esme, do you want to say a couple of words about crowd match?
Yeah, I can do. Morning, everyone. So, Creative Scotland Crowd Match Fund is a partnership between ourselves and Crowdfunder that has a overall budget of 250,000 in match funding. So this fund can support individuals and organisations and businesses as well, actually, of for match funding up to £10,000 project. So this fund is slightly different because it's a match fund, so the amount of funding awarded is based on your crowdfunding target. So for every £1 you raise on the crowdfunding platform, we'll match it with £1 if you're successful, up to a maximum of 50% of your funding goal, if that makes sense. So you can go up to 10,000 as long as that is 50% less of your overall target. So this fund is designed to kind of boost your fundraising efforts. So if you know you want to fundraise, or maybe you're already fundraising using the Crowdfunder platform, you can apply for this fund. So you can already have your Crowdfunder page, or you can develop one and apply. So yeah, it's a good one for projects that you think might get external support. yeah, and it's currently open as well. So that's why we wanted to flag that one. I'll pop a link in the chat there.
Thanks, Esme. And like Esme said, this is a good one for maybe things that are less traditional projects, for things where you might have already a community behind you, or where you might be creating something that people might want, a perk or something from like an album or a game or something like that. Um, and it's one of those things which can, reduce maybe the ask on public funds, but also boost your crowdfunder if you're already doing that. Then could I next slide, please? So I'm just going to talk a little bit more about funding delivered by partners, and these are funds where we might give some funding to another organisation or join one of their funding programs in order to reach different people or reach out to a different community. So you will see that there's quite a few things there. There's many, many more on our website. Some of them operate a deadline, some of them don't. A couple of them that I'll mention, and quite a lot of these are small grants. So the Visual Arts and Craftmaker Awards, which we partner with local authorities and arts organisations across Scotland. Not all local authorities, although if you check our website, it will give you a list of where the VACMA programme does take part, and that will provide small grants of maybe £1,500 for professional creative development for visual artists and craft makers. And that one does have deadlines and they're not open at the moment, but look out for the 26-27 funding coming out. We also have the National Lottery Awards for All programme and a new adapted Cultural and Creative Businesses Fund. So the National Lottery Awards for All programme is specifically around support in communities. It is a partnership between the National Lottery Community Fund, Sport Scotland and Creative Scotland. The National Lottery Community Fund manage the funding for Awards for All, but we make the decisions on the arts and screen and film portfolio. So do check that one out. It is really good as a starter project if you've never applied for funding before. If what you want to do is very much focused on communities, you can also talk to the National Lottery Community Fund and they can give you advice on that fund. So we do recommend that people do that. Esme, do you want to give a quick thing on the Adapted and Cultural and Creative Businesses Fund? And this is a new fund that is just launched just now.
Yeah, so this is a brand new fund to Creative Scotland. So if you do have any technical questions, we might have to signpost you to our inquiries team. So yeah, the Adapted Cultural and Creative Buildings Fund is delivered by the Scottish Futures Trust, and it's a partnership between us and them. So it's currently open for an expression of interest phase. So this fund will be looking to support a small number of organisations, I think around 10, but I want to check that, to undertake minor capital works. And also it would cover some contingency and to carry out an evaluation. So this project is to support Pathfinder projects to respond to identified climate-related risks affecting their existing cultural and creative building sites or assets. So yeah, and it's going to be quite a fast-moving fund. So we're looking for projects, capital projects that are kind of ready to go quite quickly. So expressions of interest is open, but I'll pop the link in. And then, yeah, if you have any questions, you can contact Environmental. But we don't, this is quite exciting for us as we don't have kind of capital focused projects just now. We have, like the Open Fund can fund little bits of capital, but this project, this fund is aimed at that. So yeah, I will pop the link in.
Yep, and like we say, it's a very new fund, and expressions of interest are open, I think, until the 24th of March. Next slide, please. So, some quick funding pointers. Do check if it's the right funder or the funding programme. It might be that one of the other National Lottery funders is more appropriate, especially if it's a more heritage-focused project, or if it's very community-focused, you might fit one of their priorities, particularly for priority areas or types of activity. Your project might also fit one of Scotland's targeted or devolved funds better, especially if you're doing some work maybe with young people that is around music. do look at the Youth Music Initiative funding. Do read the guidance. Do make sure your budget adds up. That's one of the things that usually causes delays with funding applications, is the kind of back and forward with our funding team around budgets and things that don't quite add up. Do speak to our inquiries team. They're there to help. And do remember there's huge demands on our funds. Only about a third of applications can be supported. And quite often there's not much that you can do to change your application if it's been recommended for funding and it just doesn't quite fit in amongst all of the other things that we need to fund and make sure that we have a range of geography, a range of types of project, a range of art forms, a range of size of organisation supported. So there is quite a lot of demand on our fund at the moment. And next slide, please. Last slide. So if you do have any questions, this is just an excuse for me to show a picture of the George Wiley, Friends of George Wiley installation in the Clyde. But if there is any questions, do contact our inquiries team. They can help you with immediate questions on applications. They can help you with registering for the application portal, and they can also guide you with other to other contacts or other colleagues who might be able to give you any specific advice that you might have on any area. And that's the end of our presentation now. We'll just see what questions have been bubbling up.
Brilliant. Thank you so much to you both for going through that and talking through the funds. I'll just bring up the Q&A section. So we have a question. If you have funding from the lottery heritage, can you also get funding from Creative Scotland for the same project?
Yes, you can. We would encourage people to make sure that you're applying to each separate funder for the thing that most fits their area of interest. So if you do have a National Lottery Heritage funded project and it does have a clear arts element and you're paying artists or you're supporting the development and delivery of arts work, then yes, you can apply to Creative Scotland's other funds for those projects. The only restriction we have around lottery funding is that you can't apply for the National Lottery Awards for All fund and apply to Creative Scotland's other funds as well, because we fund Awards for All. It is slightly complicated in that we only fund the arts and film side of things. So if you're funded by the Community Fund or Sport Scotland, that's a separate thing. But we do have a contact email address on the Awards for All page for the National Lottery Community Fund if you do have any questions about applying for that.
Brilliant, thanks very much. We've got a wee question around when applying to the open fund, what is the best way to work out which category to select in your application, EDI, places and communities, visual arts, etc. Or is it possible to meet with somebody to kind of work this out?
You can have a chat with our inquiries team around that, but what I would say is we use that section of our application form to help us understand what the main point of your application is about, to make sure that we assign your application to the right person, the right team to assess it and to look at it. So if you do think that your application is a visual arts application, but actually it's about working with a community to help develop or an artwork that you might not have the full knowledge of what it is yet, so it might also be placing communities. You can pick, either one, and then you also have a second. There's a second sort of thing where you can pick the other art forms that are also or specialism areas that are related to it. It will also get checked by our funding team, and then by the specialism lead for that area of work. So even if you select something and you're not entirely sure that that's correct, or if you select multi-art form, it does go through 2 checks so that people who have experience in those areas can read it over and make sure that it's being assessed and looked at by the appropriate person. So it doesn't matter what you pick, somebody else will be looking at it too to make sure that we get the right person to look at your things, but you can talk to our inquiries team.
Brilliant, thanks Karen. I've got a question around, do you have simpler or shorter application forms for your smaller grants?
So in the open fund, we ask different questions if you apply for under £20,000 and we ask slightly more questions and slightly different questions if you apply for over £20,000. However, that's why we partner in the Awards for All programme, and that is a much shorter and simpler application form. And a lot of our smaller devolved funds or our targeted funds have shorter application forms as well. So I think it's about deciding which fund is appropriate for you, particularly if you're looking at under £10,000, which is how much we can support through Awards for All, or if you're looking at under £20,000, Creative Scotland's Open Fund can support that with different questions depending on how much you're asking for.
Thanks, Karen. We've got a wee question around, can an individual apply to assess an idea with taster sessions on craft and creative arts, or kind of new to exploring new ideas?
You can come in if you want to try something, to do a pilot, like series of events or taster sessions and that for a community maybe. Again, you'd be looking at whether you would either apply to the Open Fund, Creative Scotland's Open Fund, or the National Lottery Awards for All programme, especially if it's around trying something new for communities. The Awards for All programme is probably the best first step.
And just to add to that one, we also can support evaluation costs as part of a wider project. So if you are coming in for a pilot, just something to consider adding an evaluation to that, and that might strengthen applications to different funders, I guess, if you're looking to continue funding.
That's great. Thank you both. We've got a question: if the organisation already holds an Awards for All project for other activities within the organisation, can a separate application be made for creative music activities to Creative Scotland via Awards for All?
So that's a question that I think you will need to ask the National Lottery Community Fund for. They administer the Awards for All Fund on our behalf, and they can answer those questions, because it might depend on whereabouts you are in in the process of one grant when they allow you to apply for another one. But so do check both the Awards for All website and check in with the National Lottery Community Fund people.
Perfect. Someone's asked what fund would be best for capital funding for facility upgrades, or is that something that's eligible?
So you can include some capital funding in applications to Awards for All and to Creative Scotland's Open Fund. However, we can't accept applications that are only for capital funding because we don't have a capital fund. James, you might want to drop me a line and I'll see what I can give you and what I know about some other funds as well. We do try to put some information in our on our website on other funds that we know about, and but unfortunately, without us having our own capital fund, it is around how that fits in a wider application, or whether there are other funders out there that could help.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got a question: can you apply for funding to develop SCQF rated courses? I don't know if that's something you'd be able to answer, or there's more detail around that specifically, but I don't know if that would be getting put in touch with your inquiries team, just due to the kind of specific context of that wee question.
It is quite but I think I can answer it. We don't support courses that are officially rated courses, so we couldn't fund something that was going to be an SQA course or going to be a course that was accredited. That's just not something that Creative Scotland can support. I'm not sure if we've got any advice on our website about that, but yeah, you can speak to our inquiries team, but we can't support accredited courses.
That's great, thank you, Karen. So we've got, if the activity has had one round of self-funded R&D and we applied for an additional R&D to build the project, would this be considered? as the project has already started?
It depends how you lay that out in the application to the Open Fund, but I would think that if you've done some R&D yourself, that's essentially development to understand the demand or the interest in your project or to understand what it is that you want to develop. And if you're applying to Creative Scotland to start something, then your project will have a beginning, middle, and an end, and you will set that up in the way of a project. So your previous self-funded development would just be that initial development that you've done in order to understand the interest in your project, and then you apply to a funder to deliver a second stage of that, which is separate from your original one. So definitely, I think you could apply to us. But maybe you might want to talk to our inquiries team, and then they can put you in touch with whoever is relevant from a specialism side if you do need more information.
Perfect, thank you. We've got a question, can an environmental NGO apply for a creative project focused on nature?
Yep, definitely, especially if you're applying to support fees for artists, to support funding for that project, support people to engage, you'd be eligible to apply.
That's brilliant, thank you. And then we've got a question around calculating a budget for an exhibition that they won't know what works will be submitted until later in the process. So
that's a good question. I think quite often we sort of say to people to look at other benchmarking and other projects that have happened that are similar or other information that might be available. For example, if Scottish Artists Union or if one of the other visual arts organisations might have some information on their website around how much cost you might want to budget for mounting an exhibition. But if that's not available, I think what I would personally advise people to do is have a contingency for, delivery of a project. You don't need to go into lots of details. I think if you've got a project, a ballpark amount of budget for delivery of the project that includes exhibition mounting, then that would be fine. I would say that you can't come into our programs or our funding programs just for the exhibition mounting. We do get applications like that, and they're not usually eligible. Or so I think if you've got a wider project that you can have a budget set aside for delivery of that project, then that would be fine. You don't need to go into significant detail.
Thank you. And I've just noticed there's some questions in the chat as well. Are collaborative applications between two or more applicants eligible?
Yes, but we need to have one lead applicant who makes the application and who is the bank account holder, etc., for all those technical things. But you can apply as a collaboration or as a partnership.
That's great, thank you. Sorry, there's quite a few here. I'm just working my way through them as well. Sorry, some of them are quite specific, so I'll maybe advise that you email the inquiries team if it's quite specific to your project and detailed as well. Sorry.
Yeah, and we're happy to, if you send the chat on to us, we can answer some of those there. I know there's another question in the Q&A around having a project with creative output in Gaelic and English, and do these outputs need different sources of funding? No, you can apply to us for the whole funding for a project. We have a Gaelic Arts officer who can provide advice as well.
That's brilliant, thank you. Someone asked what's the current success rate for the open funds. I don't know if you have that information at all.
I think it's around 35%, 34, 35%. That's where it was sitting last time I checked. It's not usually much higher than that. Yeah, so it's about a third.
That's brilliant. No, we'll maybe pick up some of the thanks for your offer, Karen, of picking up those specific questions in the chat out with the call today. So we massively appreciate everyone's time. There's just one more general question. If applying as an individual, do you need a business bank account?
You don't necessarily need a business bank account, but you need to be an individual. You need to have a bank account that matches your name, and there's some advice on that on the website.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much. So if anyone's got any specific questions, we'll make sure to email out the inquiries, email for Creative Scotland, and also you can email Funding Scotland and we'll pass it on that way. But thank you all so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. A massive thank you to Karen and Esme for your time and helping us to host this session. And we hopefully look forward to seeing you all at our next Meet the Funders session in April. So thank you all very much.